A dishevelled Nicolas Sarkozy has set off for a second day of questioning over claims he received £42 million in illegal payments from the late Libyan dictator Colonel Gaddafi. Sarkozy, president from 2007 to 2012, was seen leaving his home in Paris with his lawyer hours after he was driven away from a police station in Nanterre at midnight. The 63-year-old was placed in custody yesterday over allegations the late Libyan dictator financed his 2007 election campaign. Meanwhile, the man who blew the whistle on the alleged multi-million euro payments, the uncle of human rights lawyer Amal Clooney, has defended his decision to turn supergrass. Former arms dealer Ziad Taqi, 68, who is known to be close to Mrs. Clooney, the 40-year-old wife of Hollywood star George, said, "Gaddafi is not guilty, it's Sarkozy who is guilty." Mr. Taqi told L'Orient Le Jour, the Daily Orient, Lebanon's leading French-language newspaper, that his decision to go to police was not revenge, but an act that was expected. Mr. Taqi, who is French-Lebanese, claims to have been the official mediator between Sarkozy and the Libyan regime from 2004 and took pride in working in the shadows. "I went to Libya for the first time at the request of Nicolas Sarkozy in late 2004, early 2005, to open a new page with France," said Mr. Taqi. Neither Sarkozy nor his lawyers have commented publicly about the latest development in an inquiry that began 5 years ago. But he has in the past called the allegations grotesque and a manipulation. Sarkozy is said to have received the kickbacks in 2007 during the presidential election campaign that swept him to power for a single 5-year term. French law bans candidates from receiving cash payments above £6,300, but the massive donation is said to have been laundered through bank accounts in Panama and Switzerland. Sarkozy is now under huge pressure to explain himself in the light of what his opponents called compelling evidence and faces corruption charges over the next 48 hours. A document made public in Paris is said to show that the French leader and the former Libyan dictator made an illegal financial deal. Written in Arabic and signed by Moussa Kassa, Gaddafi's intelligence chief, in 2006, it refers to an agreement in principle to support the campaign for the candidate for the presidential elections, Nicolas Sarkozy, for a sum equivalent to euros 50 million. A bundle of incriminating evidence was originally leaked by senior members of Libya's National Transitional Council to French investigative news site Mediapart. A governmental briefing note among papers sent to Mediapart points to numerous visits to Libya by Sarkozy and his colleagues which were aimed at securing funding. One, said to have taken place on October 6, 2005, led to campaign finance to NS being all paid, assumed to be a reference to Sarkozy. At the time, Sarkozy was an ambitious interior minister who was raising money for his presidential election campaign. Mediapart claims that the Euros 50 million referred to in the note was laundered through accounts including a Swiss one opened in the name of the sister of Jean-François Cope, the leader of Sarkozy's party, who are now called the Republicans. The money was then allegedly distributed through an arms dealer called Ziad Taqi, who was acting as a middleman between Arab despots and French politicians. The news follows claims last year by Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, that Libya had financed Sarkozy's election. Saif al-Islam, who is now being held in Libya following the toppling of his father's regime, said Sarkozy must first give back the money he took from Libya to finance his electoral campaign. "We funded it." Eyebrows were first raised when Gaddafi was honored with a state visit to Paris in late 2007. He was referred to as the brother leader by the French president and allowed to pitch his tent next to the Élysée Palace. The apparently incriminating evidence, which will now be passed to French police, emerged through an investigation into Taqi ad-Din's activities. The arms dealer's doctor, Didier Groscott, says he witnessed negotiations about funding. As France's head of state, Sarkozy could not be prosecuted while in office, but fraud squad officers raided his Paris home within days of him losing the 2012 presidential elections. Sarkozy turned on his friend Gaddafi at the beginning of the Arab Spring in 2011. French jets were the first to attack Gaddafi's tanks in a brutal military campaign which ended with the Libyan leader being murdered. Since losing the election in 2012 to his socialist rival François Hollande, Mr. Sarkozy has been living in Paris with this third wife, former supermodel and pop singer Carla Bruni, 50. He has tried to make comebacks to power, but all have failed. A judicial source in Nanterre said, Mr. Sarkozy can be held in custody for up to 48 hours. His period in custody started on Tuesday morning. How Sarko has divided opinion in France. Nicolas Sarkozy, who governed France as a tough-talking right-wing president from 2007 until 2012, is a divisive figure in French politics who has been dogged by legal cases since leaving office. Taking a hard line on immigration, security and national identity, the 63-year-old attempted a comeback during last year's presidential campaign. Sarkozy tried to bury his bling-bling image, which he earned during his time in office owing to his love of the high life, by casting himself as a defender of the down and outs against the elites. Nicolas Sarkozy, who governed France as a tough-talking right-wing president from 2007 until 2012, is a divisive figure in French politics who has been dogged by legal cases since leaving office, but the man known universally in France as Sarko was humiliated in the right-wing's primary vote, finishing third behind François Fillon, who served for 5 years as prime minister under Sarkozy. The ex-president's lavish lifestyle, he is married to former top model Carla Bruni, and failure to make good on many of his promises while in power had relegated him to a one-term presidency after he lost to socialist François Hollande in 2012. The son of a Hungarian immigrant father has a pugnacious style which is seen as an asset by his admirers, but a liability by his detractors who fault his apparent lack of self-control. Many remember when Sarkozy visited the 2008 agriculture show in Paris, a fixture on any top politician's calendar, and said "Get lost, dumbasses" to a man who refused to shake his hand. His temper also flared during a televised debate before last year's primary vote, when he slammed as disgraceful a question on fresh claims that he received millions in campaign funding from the regime of late Libyan leader Gaddafi. Born on January 28, 1955, the football fanatic and cycling enthusiast is an atypical French politician. He has a law degree, but unlike most of his peers, did not attend the exclusive École Nationale d'Administration (ENA), the well-worn production line for future French leaders. The ex-president's lavish lifestyle, he is married to former top model Carla Bruni, pictured, and failure to make good on many of his promises while in power had relegated him to a one-term presidency after he lost to socialist François Hollande in 2012. After he won the presidency at age 52, he was initially seen as injecting a much-needed dose of dynamism, making a splash on the international scene and wooing the corporate world. Sarkozy was also the first French president to divorce, remarry and have a child, his fourth while in office. Sarkozy had refused to respond to a summons for questioning in the case, which drew heightened scrutiny in November 2016, when a businessman admitted delivering 3 cash-stuffed suitcases from Libya as campaign contributions. By the end of his term, however, he had the lowest popularity ratings for a post-war French leader. His successor, Hollande, went on to score lower. After his humiliating 2012 defeat, Sarkozy famously promised that "you won't hear about me anymore," before turning to the lucrative international lecture circuit. But few observers were surprised when he returned to frontline politics in 2014, standing for and winning the leadership of the conservative UMP party, now renamed the Republicans. A host of legal troubles failed to deter Sarkozy's comeback bid in 2016. In July 2014, he became the first former head of state to be taken into custody for questioning, which led to charges for corruption, influence peddling and violation of legal secrecy. In that case, he is accused of conspiring with his lawyer to give a magistrate a lucrative job in exchange for inside information on an investigation into the financing of his 2007 campaign by L'Oréal heiress Liliane Bettencourt. On Tuesday, he was taken into police custody again as part of the inquiry into the alleged financing of his 2007 presidential run by Gaddafi. Sarkozy's questioning comes weeks after a former associate, Alexander Jaouri, was arrested in London as part of the financing probe. He is being held ahead of a hearing in Britain on March 28 and faces a hearing on extradition to France in July.